But when you take your hinges and your doors or your shutters off of your frames, mark them on the top in pencil where they go. You can just draw something, a little note to yourself where they go, but also label the hinges, because the way that they sit over time and then the way they were installed to be square, if you move it around, that hinge might just be a little bit more cockeyed one direction than the other, and they may not fit flush like they were originally installed once you put them back on. They already had these pilot holes drilled into the top where I imagine they painted them at the factory. So I just found a hook, sunk it in it till it grabbed, put an opposite one on my beam in the garage, and just bungee corded it for its hanging spot. And then I just wanted to recap. I don't think I mentioned, I'm gonna just use this putty knife to get all the loose paint off of these UV spots, or where the paint has burned through. This is the one of the 8 that needed both a staple for the tilt rod, which is broken. I just need to get that back in that hole, and this little, I don't know what you call them, the louver pin was broken, and so this used to be a hole. I've already repaired it. So before you start this project, just to have on hand, you'll need to do a Home Depot and an Amazon purchase. You'll need your flat white primer. I would say a can each of the primer and the gloss per shutter, unless you have very tiny shutters. But figure one for one. And then you'll need TSP, which is just a powder that you add to water and clean your shutters with. After you've cleaned them with the TSP and just a sponge, you can dry it off after you've gotten all the dust and dirt off. You need to take a lint-free cloth and sander deglosser, and you do have to scrub the top gloss finish off every part of the shutter so that the spray paint will stick very well. This is what I got on Amazon. I think it was like $5 for a 10-pack of these spring-loaded repair pins. You push the fat end into the hole on the side of the, in the frame, and then the little spring compressed pin, you flatten it with a screwdriver and slide the louver onto it so it goes into that hole. You'll need a set of shutter staples. They're normally a standard size. I can't remember the exact length of the legs and the width, but you can measure your own and order what ones you need. You need a mask so you don't breathe in spray paint fumes. So back to that one pin repair, all I did was exactly what I described. I had to bore out the hole with a 1/4-inch drill because for some reason these are a little bit fatter than the existing hole on the side there. Slid this louver back in, and I just used regular wood filler to patch that hole where it split. And I probably won't even sand it down, it's pretty smooth. Anyway, the next step I'm gonna do is just fix that staple. Okay, here's the staple repair part. I'm just gonna push this back in, and sometimes, or most often, you can just throw these back in and there will still be enough, I guess, of the hole where it goes in will still be narrow enough to hold them in place when you do move the tilt rod up and down. Sometimes those holes get kind of bored out over time, and then these staples don't really fit in well, and they're just jiggle around and they come out quickly after you use it or open the shutter 1 or 2 times. So I've seen or heard of people just shoving ends of toothpicks in those tiny staple holes on either side and using that as kind of like a dowel to then push this into so something grips it. I'm gonna do some wood glue, and hopefully the hole is still small enough and this glue is tacky enough to hold this in place. And so that's that. I'm gonna give it a try. You wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing unless I had a camera installed in my eyeball. So I'm just gonna use these long pliers and try to get it lined up with the existing hole on the tilt rod. And it's a huge pain in the ass to do the tilt rod when the louvers need them. That one actually was easy. I don't know how well that's gonna sit, but I made a mess. I'm just gonna clean that glue up. Let that glue sit for a while. I can't even tell if it's in focus. If you push those in too far, you kind of want to match it up. You can see sort of the length of each of the other staples on both sides, and you don't want to go too far in or else it will want to pull when you try to give it travel. Here's my warm water and TSP mixture and my sponge, and you're just going to go around cleaning. You don't need to use a lot of water. It doesn't need to be that wet. And just get all the dust off. You can see when it's wet how much dust is on there. Sometimes it seems like it's not that dirty, and then until you run a finger or a wet rag over it, you can see all the hairs and gross dust and grime. So I'll leave this to dry once it's clean, and then this is how the shutters look after they've been washed and dried with that TSP solution compared to before. Where's all that UV burn? I mean, these look like, 5 times newer. If you didn't have all this stuff to obviously see that they were worn, this is way whiter and cleaner. So if you don't want to repaint and you don't have all this damage to your paint, and you're just you're taking these shutters off to replace your broken louver pin or your staple to your tilt rod, the TSP wash and a dry with a towel will really go a long way to help make your shutters look newer. On to the next step. Give it a shake. This is gonna be hard to show you with one hand, but remove your cap. It says to do it with a well-saturated, lint-free cloth. I don't really do that. It gets saturated over time. It looks kind of like milk. And anyway, I'll just start on a corner, and I'll do the top and the sides, and then each shutter. Sometimes you can lose track, but you just give it a little scrub. It's gonna move on me because I don't have 2 hands. And circular, it says circular motion, but I don't know that just back and forth or circular really matters. Sometimes you have to do just up and down or sideways. Circles don't work. But you'll see paint will start to come off with that top coat. So I'm sure the sun has done a good enough damage or good enough job of eating that top gloss coat off, and I maybe don't have to do this, but why risk it? This is just maybe an extra 15-20 minutes of your time and a few dollars more in materials, and probably worth it. So keep turning your cloth as it gets white to a fresh spot of cloth. Put more deglosser on there, and then finish your shutters, and then you can do your primer. Okay, the deglossing is finished. I didn't even use one side of a rag. The other side's completely clean. I just kept folding it in my hand to a cleaner spot, but you can see how much paint it took off, a decent amount. It's funny that it actually looks glossier and whiter after you degloss it. So some chemical in this mix makes it seem shiny and new. It's definitely, don't just do this and then leave it. You do need to paint it after this, prime and paint. So that took me about 15 minutes, and now I'm going to get it ready for spray. But essentially, you look online. Shutter Medic, I think, is the website where it kind of shows you a step by step as to the order you should spray. And there's also a video from a professional painter that does it with a sprayer. Same, I think same principles as far as the order. I'm gonna do these, the ends of the louvers on both sides, plus this edge, and I'm gonna go over and do the other side. Then I'm gonna tilt it and spray these on both sides up and down. I'm gonna do the opposite way, spray them again, and then I'm gonna come around, spray the tilt rod back, and then I'm just gonna start, you know, do my angle down, spray, and then angle up, spray, and then on the same thing on the back, just to get any spots that you missed, and then I'll do the edges on both sides, and then the back of the tilt rod, or I guess the front of it, since it faces you. This is what the shutter looks like after being primed. I'm not really sure. You can probably tell that the sheen is much nicer and more even than before. It is the flat white of the primer, so it looks like it should. Because this one was damaged worse than the others, I didn't really know what to expect when I primed these parts that I was just scraping before that had the loose paint. And I'm certainly not going to go back to sanding this down and scraping it all the way. I suppose I could have either sanded that as smooth as possible so there wasn't really much of a ridge, but I still think you would have seen the thickness difference once I glossed it after the prime. The other thing I could have done maybe is, I don't know, used a wood filler very thinly to kind of float that, but I think that would have been a bad idea too. This isn't going to be one of the things you'll be able to see once it's glossed from afar, but you will be able to see it when you walk up close. So things to consider if you have a shutter with a similar paint damage where it's uneven and chipped back. But I'm going to gloss it right now and let you see the finished product. Here is the finished shutter. This is the external view, what you would see if you were looking into the house. And these are the spots where you had, or where I had, you know, that paint damage and I didn't fill properly or sand properly. So up close you will be able to see, but on the inside view, I'm really pleased. This is what will be seen on the interior of the home. If you mess up on the paint where you have a smudge or you accidentally grab it, don't dry sand this. Get sandpaper that you can use with water. At 800 grit probably is best, and then you can wet sand any imperfection out of the spray paint if you accidentally put too much. Definitely don't overspray your shutters, and definitely don't overspray any of the gloss or the primer, but in the cracks there, because then your louvers won't be able to turn. They'll get stuck. Here are the three larger ones. You can see when I'm talking about that hinge, or making sure you order your hinges correctly. The gap on the top of that shutter is a little bit off. It doesn't look square. And those two didn't want to close together, but I eventually just kind of nudged them in. And of all of the shutters, the only louver that this happened to was on this shutter, where maybe the paint was a little too thickly applied, too thick right there, and it wants to bite the louver when I get it to there. It resists, and it is peeling it off. I'm not going to repair that, but just make sure you don't do too thick of a coat when you do the inside. And then here are the other ones. The gloss looks a lot better on the frame of the shutter than it does on the louver itself. But they came out, and good luck on your project.